Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tim Yoon, and today I'm going to share with you my second video on my series on data persistence in SwiftUI. As you know, data persistence is an absolute essential for any real apps. And on my previous video, I showed you the easiest way, which was to use user defaults using a generic function to be able to persist data. The next step up is to use CoreData. And CoreData is a built-in database that Apple provides for Apple developers. And it can be used in either iOS or macOS. It's got quite a bit of complexity in it because it can actually be a SQL database underneath the layer of abstraction. It can be very complex in many different ways and can lead to a lot of difficulties. But today I'm going to show you the easiest way you can get started with CoreData. Now, it's got a few things that are a little bit different from what you're used to, so hang in there, and I'm going to start from the very beginning so you can see how to use this. I'm going to use build a to-do app so you can see the example in progress. So the first thing you want to do is create a new project, and let's make sure to use CoreData here. And I'll just go ahead and check mark you host in CloudKit, because with this method you can actually get CloudKit persistence with this. So I'm going to just call this to-do CoreData. We don't need to include tests today. And we're going to just go right into it next. So let me make the screen a little bit bigger so that it fills up the view better. Okay, here we go. So when you start an app like this, you will get some boilerplate code in the content view. Whereas normally you would just get a hello world kind of thing. If you check mark CoreData on the app start, this is what you get. And it's actually useful to start at the app, the at main struct app to see what's going on. Here what they do is they create a persistence controller called the persistence controller.shared. And then the content view, of course, you're familiar with that. Environment, manage object content, persistence controller, container.viewContext. Okay, that's what's being injected into the environment that can be then used by subviews or the view itself by the content view. So now let's go into the content view. Let's go to the preview first. And you can see in the preview what happens is you have content view at environment. So let me just do this so you can see it maybe a little bit better. Dot environment, and then you're injecting in the managed object context, which again is the persistence controller. But for the preview, you're going to be injecting in the preview.container.viewContext. So when you're going to see this in action on the preview, you'll just get this in-memory data controller. But when you're actually running the real app, it will get the shared, which is the persistent thing that will stay and not just be in memory. All right, so let's go up here and see what we got. It's got content view, it's got a lot of the environment managed object context, sorry. And then there's this thing called a fetch request, and we're going to go over that in a minute, and a variety of other stuff. Okay, so we're not going to be interested in using item and item, which is what Apple gives us as a default to kind of get started. Instead, we're going to create a to-do. Okay, so you make sure to click on this and get to entity, and we're going to change that from entity to to-do. And we're going to give it a can be some troubles like this. Make sure to select the entity that you want, which is the to-do entity, not the item. And then we're going to click on add attribute, and the attribute we want is text. And that's going to be a string. And the other thing that we want is done, which is going to be a bool. And then the third thing it's handy to have is timestamp. Okay, and that's going to be a date. Here we go. So text, which is the text of the to-do item, whether it's done or not, which is a Boolean, and a timestamp. Okay. Now, the next thing we got to do is we're going to say, hey, we're going to manage this ourselves. So instead of code generation being class definition right here, this is the step we actually have to say, hey, we're going to manually control this and generate the code that's going to work with to do. And in order to do that, you go to editor. And that's the key right here. Editor, create NS manage object subclass. And next. And make sure you check the to do. Next. And you're going to save it to your app folder. And there it is right there. Now, because you have told Xcode that you're going to manually generate the code right here, you have to create this and take care of this yourself. Okay, so let's take a look. Now, the to-do CoreData class is basically just empty. And then here we go. The properties for the to-do CoreData is here. And here we can actually make some changes to the data we have right here. As you can see, the text is not just a string, it's an optional string. And the timestamp is not just a date, it's an optional date. So we'll just go ahead and make this non-optional, okay? Then what we're gonna do next is go back to content view, and we're gonna just make some edits here, some changes. So as I said, we're not gonna deal with the item, we're gonna deal with to do. So let's make some changes that'll fix that, okay? So we're fine with add environment, we're fine with add fetched, sort descriptor, and all this stuff, and timestamp. But we don't want this to be item, we want this to be to do, okay? Ascending is true, that's great, that's great. We don't want this to be items, we want this to be to do's. And here, instead of item, we want it to be a to do. Wonderful, now that's all good. The next thing we need to do is come up here, and I actually been using navigation stack instead of navigation view, and it doesn't really matter what we're doing today. But anyway, there's list for each. Instead of items, that's going to be to-dos, like that. And then we should probably rename the item to to-do. And then we'll say to-do. Good. And then the label is text instead of item again. This is to do. And on delete, delete items. We'll change that later on. Ooh, let's see. We don't need the bang here because we made this a non-optional. So just like that. And here we go. Again, here, we don't need that either. Good. Everything is looking good. Now, we now don't need the edit necessarily, but we'll leave that there for now. And then the toolbar item, button action, add item. So we need to go edit that because we don't want to use the boilerplate software here. So instead of add item, let's just rename that to add to do, okay? And then here, instead of item, let's call that to do, okay? So what you do is to do context, view context. And then instead of new item, we'll say to do. And instead of new item, we'll say to do. And here we can, set a few things here, like to do dot text equals empty string to do dot is done equals false. Okay. And then we got all this stuff in here, which actually is okay, but I've just been converting this to try question mark view context dot save. And we can just get rid of this because I'm just trying to keep this super simple, as simple as possible. Okay, and that'll allow us to add. Okay, now we got to deal with the delete items here. So we're going to rename that to delete to do. Okay, and then instead of items, it should be to dos like that. And as I said earlier, I'm just going to make this a little bit simpler by getting rid of this and saying try question mark view context that's save. Now you saw an error just now, and that's because when you go to the persistence controller in the preview, they, meaning Apple engineers, have given us some boilerplate that creates some new items, okay? But we don't want that. If this is, because what we really want to do is create some to-do items. Okay, so let's do that. To-do, and we'll say to-do. And let's see now, we're gonna say to-do. Right, very good. And then we're going to say to do dot text is that, and to do that is done is equal to false. Okay. So what this will do is actually create 10 to-dos. I actually don't like 10, so let's just make this a little smaller and say 5. And then we'll say, you know, to-do item number, and we'll say index like that. Okay, so that index goes to here to give it a unique text. So now let's go back to content view, and hopefully now that we have that, it won't crash. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it did not crash, which is what we like. Definitely like that. All right, now let's go back to the main view here and see what's going on. What you see is that they use a navigation link so that when you click on this, it goes to this other view right here like that. And I think that's okay. But I'm just going to try to keep it super, super simple. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is just create a struct. Let's call this to-do row view. And it's a view, and it's going to take in an observed object var to do of type to do, and the body, var body, will be an H stack, and it'll be a text field, and it'll be a to do and text $string to do dot text, and then we will put in a spacer and display the is done status. So it'll be image, system name, and then to do dot is done. And we'll do a ternary operator. So if it is done, we'll do a check mark dot circle. And if it's not done, then we'll just give it a circle like that. Okay. So now if we substitute this, get rid of that for now, and just put in to do row view to do like this. Here we go. We got it. To do item, and it's actually a text field, so we can make some changes. We can actually, that doesn't work yet, so we got to go back to the to do row view and add in a tap gesture. On tap gesture, what do? We're gonna to do dot is done dot toggle. Okay. And just to make it look a little nicer, I'm going to get rid of this little text, which we don't need. And we're going to set that navigation title to do's for data. And give it a little check mark. Voila, I like that. Okay, now we got that. And the toolbar item, let's see, button action to do add item, add label. Okay, System Plus, that's fine. I'm not a big fan of this way of doing things, but what I'll do is I'll just say image system name, and that's plus. Okay, very good. So clicking this creates a new to-do item and say, hey, hello, wash the dog, like that. And that works with animation. We love it. Okay. So now our app is working. We can create one. We can actually delete one. This is great. So we can create, edit, delete. So the app itself is working, but so far, of course, there's no data persistence. And I'm going to show that to you shortly as soon as this the simulator opens up, so I can show you what happens here. So we'll add something to do and say, just let's say 1. And then we go like this, kill it, restart it. And 1 doesn't persist, and the check mark did not persist. So how can we make that persist? Okay, pretty easy. What we do is go back to the row view and say, on change of, what do we on change of? To do that text, which is a string, we're going to say try question mark view context dot save. Okay, but we don't have the add environment, so we're going to go get that right here. We're going to get that. And that should work right there. And then on tap gesture, when it does that, I'm going to say try question mark view context dot save. And now let's run it again on the simulator and see what we got. And we'll say 1 and check mark and kill the app. Restart the app, and voila, it's there. I'm going to put in 2 and 3. And now let's kill the app, restart it, and voila. So there you have it. We've got data persistence. And what we've done is here is a few things that you have to recognize. First thing that I did was I created this app using the template app system that Apple gives us, because it gives us a lot of useful stuff to start with. Okay, then we went into core data, and then we created the entity that we wanted, right? Then we created we actually made the code gen to be manual. Then we went to editor and then created an NS managed object subclass to create these files over here. And then when we went into these files and made these non-optional, which is much nicer for us to deal with than trying to deal with all these optionals. And then we went back to content view and made the edits that we needed to make in order to make this work and convert it from items to to-dos. And you have a fully functioning app with data persistence. This will actually save to iCloud, such that if you have multiple different devices, but you have the same app, it will sync across automatically. And that's really wonderful. So this is how you use core data. And I think kind of the easiest way to really get it going, without having to do all these other things. And yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you guys comment below and want to see how we can do this using Firebase, Firestore, I can do that. But please go ahead and like, subscribe, and give me some comments so that I can improve on these videos that I'm making and provide you content that you really want to see. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.